Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Aloha, good morning. Thank you so much for being here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. And today, Ryan, we are heading over to a guest who always gets plenty of questions at Honolulu Hale.
That's right. We want to welcome in Mayor Rick Blangiardi, who's joining us this morning. Good morning, Mayor. Thanks so much for joining us again.
I'm glad to be here, Ryan. Yunji, I really mean that. Despite what you've heard, I really mean that. I'm glad to be with you too.
Well, we have a lot of topics and issues that we want to get to, so we're going to jump right in. We're going to start the conversation where we have many times in speaking with you, and that's with COVID-19. We're seeing some of the positivity numbers increase, especially here on the island of Oahu. Your thoughts as we continue to move through this pandemic, and any other thoughts regarding mask mandates or mask wearing in our community?
Yes. Well, that's a great question. I'm glad that you asked that, because I just got off the phone with Jill Hoggy-Green, the head of Queens Hospital, CEO, talking precisely about that. Their models and the trending up we're seeing in case counts, which are not really being revealed to the public right now. I mean, there's data out there on the Department of Health's website, but as far as the sort of mass education that we had been going through, even subsequent to the mask mandate on March 25th being lifted, all that now has gone by the boards, and the public really can't track it yet. While we're not having people go to ICU, and we're not seeing the incidents, we are seeing the trends upward, and they're looking elsewhere on the mainland at what are some hot spots, and we don't want to become that. So in discussing with her, and I'm going to talk to a couple other health officials today, and what they're encouraging us to do, and really what I want to encourage people to do, and it's on a purely voluntary basis, but is to ask people to wear masks, both indoors and out, to wear masks whenever you're around people, as much as possible as a preventative. And if you've gotten the benefit of vaccination, so be it. Nobody wants to be an alarmist here. And I know that we have a desire to go forward, and we're all trying to go forward, but there's no denying right now our case counts are really trending up. And as evidence, again, as we've seen elsewhere, it's pretty infectious. It may not be anywhere near as lethal as what we've experienced before, or something that causes sickness, thankfully, because so many people have been vaccinated. But it's sick. It makes you sick enough. And we have, even some of our colleagues right now are out at Honolulu Hale, and I've talked with some of them. And it's not unlike when I got COVID. It was sort of like a bad cold, but it wasn't anything worse. But you've got a quarantine. It becomes very disruptive. We're trying to minimize that and just asking people to cooperate in a very simple, honest way. We know a lot more now than we used to know about this. And so I don't think that this is overbearing to ask people just to be that much more aware that this is happening, and please wear a mask.
What's your sort of red line when it comes to masking and bringing back a mandate? Is there a point where you could envision forcing people to wear a mask indoors?
Yeah, I think that that's a possibility, Yunji. I think anything remains a possibility while we're still in this pandemic. We hope that that won't be the case. I think a lot of it's going to depend on where these lines go, and if the cases begin to pick up, and we start, getting crowded at the hospitals. I think that that's a possibility. I don't want to say that's an absolute prediction. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think honestly, given everything we've been through, we all have to be responsive, and that's what we promised before. And what we said and what we know is that we will be spontaneous. When people were concerned about the lifting of the restrictions there was a lot of what if? We said, look, we will be responsible. We know what to do. And so this is sort of a minor request in that regard, in the spirit of being responsive to trend lines we're now seeing pick up.
In our conversation with Dr. Libby Char, one of the concerns that she had was some of these large gatherings that are planned, of course, with graduation season upon us, as well as what we're expected to see with a surge of visitors coming to the islands during the summer months. What is that message that you have for those communities for these large gatherings that are predicted to happen over the next few months?
I know, and that's the reality, Ryan. I think the message is what we're saying today right now is just be smart. I think the best thing you can possibly do at this point, given the infectious nature and the pervasive nature of Omicron, is to wear a mask, and just, it's a preventative measure. That's all. I just do everything you can. And if you've already been vaccinated, or if you haven't been boosted and you're eligible to do that, please do that. I can honestly tell you from firsthand experience, having gotten COVID, that I felt the full force field, if you will, of having had the vaccinations. I mean, I think I could have been a lot sicker, and I just wasn't, and I was really grateful for that. So it's just part of our acceptance. I just traveled last week back to the East Coast, and I was surprised how many people I saw wearing masks back there. I didn't think I would see as many as I did, but they're certainly aware, because on the East Coast right now, the numbers have gone up.
You know, on the subject of vaccinations, the last time you were with us, you said you hadn't decided whether or not to mandate vaccines for county workers. What are your thoughts on that? Is that
that was on the booster, right? We had taken a position
on the booster and anyone new hires.
Yeah, no, we have not gone back to that right now. I think we're not mandating at this point. This is early on. I do not want to be an alarmist here. We'll just watch as things evolve. I think we know the trigger points ahead of time on any kind of modeling. But at this point right now, we're just encouraging people to be responsible.
I want to move on here to another topic. Of course, the legislature just wrapped up, and one of the bills that was passed by the legislature concerns bail reform. You have been outspoken against this. Have you had a chance to talk to the governor about your request for him to veto that measure, and what response have you maybe gotten from him or anyone within the administration when talking about this issue?
Okay, well, in all fairness, he and I have played phone tag on it, but we have texted each other, and he has actually set up a meeting with me to sit down and talk not only about that bill and my appeal to him to veto it, but about even some of the other bills that he'd like to discuss, which I was very pleased that he offered that. But I am adamant that this is a bad piece of legislation. I've heard the other side arguing on behalf of it, but I'll tell you right now, family safe, public safety, top of the list with us. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now about the health issue, and our concerns. We talk more about those kinds of safeties. We're already besieged by a number of people out there that have extensive criminal records who are still wandering the streets. I mean, I'm talking about public arrests in the hundreds, turned around, misdemeanors of all kinds, even felonies that are out there. I don't want to do anything at all that's going to relax the law to make it even more convenient. And I saw what the stipulations are in there, but I would tell you, and it mentions assault, if you beat somebody up and you don't break a bone, it's only a misdemeanor. And, that's not just two young guys getting in a fight. That could be anybody. And to get sort of, I think this bill was rushed through. I think a lot more needed to go into it. And I'm opposed to anything right now that is going to allow any kind of criminal behavior of any sort, no matter how much somebody wants to argue in parse words about legality or the fine points or whatever. I don't want to do anything right now that's any more lenient. I think it's already a top of mind issue with the public, and we need to make the public feel safe. We have a shortage of police officers. Yesterday in the Star-Advertiser on the front page, I seldom, I'm talking on Spotlight today, can remember a headline the next day. I woke up yesterday and I remember that headline with Chief Vanek about crime being at a 3-year high. Why would we be introducing right now any kind of legislation until we, given especially where we are, knowing the circumstances we're facing, that would be more lenient? This does not make sense.
Well, on that topic and on that article, it was a pretty stunning piece looking at the numbers. What more do you think can be done to shore up those numbers? When you walk through Chinatown and we hear a lot about the issues in Waikiki, it does seem like there are an increasing number of incidents and the crime is very visible.
Here's the deal. In Waikiki, we have a greater police presence right now. We have more undercover agents and narco squad members than we've ever had before, despite our depletion in numbers of the police department, and that's happening. In Chinatown, we increased our police coverage substantially. Now, we have reduced a lot of things in Chinatown, so I don't want to sound defensive, but is it perfect? No. We still have a ways to go. And these are two hot spots, Waikiki especially. And part of it is, as I said earlier, you have a lot of repeat offenders who are just out there walking the street. I have a whole list of these people. I mean, people doing due diligence on it. My phone is full of people sending me pictures of bad actors or whatever. And, and many of these people are homeless as well. But as we said before, we don't want to criminalize homelessness. But when you get people with substance abuse problems, or for that matter, mental illness, as we just saw the person killed at the 4th Street Mall, that is a danger to society. And until we can find a way to take people and put them in places where they need to be, I'm not necessarily saying jail, but certainly if they commit a crime against somebody, I'm not going to be forgiving on that. I think we have to have that zero tolerance. How else are you going to create a sense of being safe? And I think we need to be very protective of Waikiki and even Chinatown, because we owe it to the people down there who really, quite honestly, for decades suffered through a lot of stuff that I think we're beginning to really do something about. So look, the numbers are what they are. And that's why I don't want to do anything right now that even sounds like we're being anything more lenient. Look, the city did a survey, the audit, the city survey, and I would tell you the one correlation across the board, and we have our 9 counties on Oahu are pretty disparate when you think about places and where people live and neighborhoods and the differences in those places and its people that populate those places. You still have a very high correlation. Like 85% of the people list safety, public safety, family safe, number 1. People want to feel safe. I don't know how else to say it. We have a responsibility in government. That's why I don't like this bill.
When we also talking about HPD, of course, the search continues for the new police chief to head up that, the department. Your thoughts about this process, the length that it's taken, and what you look to see in the next chief to help solve some of the issues that you're talking about?
Yeah, Ryan, I'm a positive guy, and you have asked me like 3 questions that unfortunately come off as being more negative in a row, whether we're talking about COVID or the crime increase. Look, this process has taken way too long, but it's already happened, so to speak. I understand that they hope to have the chief named by May 25th. I'm sorry, and that's literally days away. I'm familiar by way of the briefings that I've had. I'm not involved directly with the hiring. This is a commission function, and nor have we necessarily interviewed any of the candidates. But I have listened to the police union. I have listened to some other police officers about some of the candidates and who they favor and don't favor. I'm hoping that at the end of the day, the right decision will be made. I want to offer my respect and appreciation to Chief Roddy Vanek, who has stepped in for well up to a year now. And having been the interim chief, not easy. He withdrew his application. That makes it even more difficult to lead, especially in a department that is a first line responder. And given the nature of what the police work is all about, which is not an easy job. So we need to get on with the business of leadership. We need to have our chief in. It should have been done a long time ago. This process, I don't even know who set this process up, but to take this long and do that in such a critical leadership role, fundamentally is wrong. I think it needs to be looked at and addressed. And it's one of the things maybe we could talk about after this next chief is named. It should not take a year to name a chief of police. It just should not take a year to do that.
You did mention the recruitment numbers and the shortage numbers rather of HPD officers. What more do you think can be done? Is there a need for a pay increase? Obviously, having steady leadership is huge, but what more can be done to recruit more qualified individuals to this line of work?
Well, part of it is, and I just finished at our cabinet meeting this morning talking about that, because the police department kind of self-monitors in their recruiting, is that we have to increase our recruiting efforts. I can tell you, and I don't want to get out in front of myself, it's not for disclosure, but it's been a very aggressive bargaining session with the police department. In fact, for that matter, all of our first line responders. And I think that when the results come out and things get settled in arbitration, I think they're going to be most favorable. I think we're going to be very competitive on pay scales. We just have to get about the business of hiring people. And this is, ironically enough, we're in probably one of the most challenging job markets any of us have ever experienced before. I can't tell you, and I'm sure you've talked to other people, how often I hear, while we'd like to do that, we just don't have enough people. In fact, I just asked this morning about how we're doing with summer fun, and we're really struggling to get enough workers to help us try to achieve that 9,000 number that we hope to have in the way of kids. It used to be a summer fun job, kids home from college, especially when we're paying $15 an hour for part-time work, pretty easy, not heavy lifting. You'd have people lining up, calling in favors to get people jobs like that. And Because I can remember even my other life before I was ever in the mayor's office, people would ask me, hey, do you know anybody that knows somebody, that kind of thing. And we can't even get that done. So this is a tough challenge for us. I'm just hoping I think it starts with leadership. We get some stability in the department and all out aggression. I mean, I think I look at it from that standpoint. It's not an overnight fix. As we talked about it, I think even on the most ideal aggressive model, in order to get 200 more police officers, it's probably a 2.5-year experience on the time that it takes to recruit and have people go through the academy and the numbers that we can possibly train at one time. But we have to stop moving in that direction.
Another topic that I'm sure you enjoy talking about is rail, as we continue to dive through the variety of topics.
Did you wake up on the bad side of the bed this morning, Ryan? I would think you'd be in a great mood with the men's volleyball team. I saw you yesterday.
Yes, it was a great celebration.
What is this?
Hey, there's a lot happening at the city.
No, actually, I'm very excited about rail. I think we're doing a great job on rail. We're very anxious to see what happens next month with our recovery plan. But we've been through all kinds of due diligence and discussions ongoing, not only as a team, for those of us collectively who've worked on the project since week one, understanding its importance, but where we are at this moment in time in our conversations. So I think it's a great story that we're anxious to tell once we get our recovery plan approved. I think we have something that's credible. I'm happy to talk in great detail once I think we get by that. I already have said all along we're going to change the terminus. We've been public about that, but we need everything approved by them. But we are now in a really strong position to do that. We recently replaced a couple of people on the board because of retirements. Both Lynn McCrory, who did a great job in Hoyt Zia, and put on Art Tolentino and Marsha Brungraber, Michelle Graber. She is an unusual but terrific person. I'm excited about that. Look, we're doing a lot of good things on rail. I think that so far right now, if you were to ask me 16 months into the job, what all the big challenges we walked into, homelessness, the rail, affordable housing, a major issue for us, and a lot of where our energy is going now, have to make things happen. And then you add the ancillary things. If you've been at our cabinet meeting this morning, we talked about staffing and the challenges we have, both within our own internal operations and the procedures that it takes. But given the shortage of numbers, I think I told you before on record, I said it certainly during the State of the City, we have over 3,000 vacancies at the city. We got 5 big departments that really contribute to that. HPD is one of them. But these are those departments that are high touch for people. Facilities and maintenance. Can we fix roads? Can we fix sidewalks? All of that. We've got shortages in the hundreds in all of these departments. Those 5 add up to over 2,000 of the 3,000 vacancies. We're addressing that stuff head on. So I'm feeling, but that said, I think we've made some great strides in rail. And Lori Kaikina deserves a lot of credit as the engineer in charge, the CEO. But I want to give Colleen Hunter-Busa, her coming on the board, then becoming board chair, the board composition itself, the collaboration and cooperation we've had internally, our anticipation of the city taking over operating and maintenance, hopefully by the fall, the production timelines we have right now, the change in direction, the attitude of the FTA towards us, because they've seen the cooperation. They like the plan that we've submitted from the standpoint of it making sense. They're willing to get involved with that, provided, because it's a process you have to go through once we officially submit the recovery plan. We get their blessing on that. It's good news for us.
On the topic of Lori Kahikina, she was on here last week, and she did say that they're hoping that they would be able to turn over a portion of the route, I believe, from Kapolei all the way to the stadium in October, if all goes well. And of course, who knows what happens between now and then. But if that is possible, when do you anticipate people will actually be able to ride the train from the city's perspective, assuming that Hart is able to actually turn over that portion of the route in October?
Well, I think that's when we would begin doing it, because I think what she's saying in the fall, a lot of fall presupposes here that we're going to have the 90-day trial period that we have to go through preceding it. And then we would do it. So I've been saying late fall, whether that's October, November, but hopefully within the calendar year of 2022, we'll start that first phase. If you want to know the second phase, because we already have the guideway built on Middle Street, as we begin to turn the corner down Dillingham, we think we can be at Middle Street for service probably by January of 24. So now we're talking a little bit more than a year to take us further on there for ridership. And then it's going to be, our plans right now on what's been projected, it would be 7 years from now, we would be at Civic Center. So that's May 2029. And there'll be that natural pause at Middle Street. And again, keep in mind, this is always going to be a multimodal service. So we've talked about even getting to Civic Center on that Holly Cahuilla South Street and what that's going to look like in the deployment of buses to get people everywhere else they're going. But we'll be beyond Aloha Stadium, which gets us past two big employment centers. It doesn't get us into the downtown or the Dillingham corridor, but I think it's, we're going to move this as fast as we possibly can. And that's where we are.
You mentioned your conversations on the federal level. I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit more about what those conversations were like when you went up to the East Coast to begin those conversations about this revised plan, their reaction and your overall interpretation of how that went.
I think my overall interpretation, it went very well. I think that, look, I knew coming in, I talked to the FTA administrator, the prior one, Jane Williams, before I ever took office. And she gave me a no holds barred assessment of where things were. And little did I know. I mean, I knew, look, I don't think I went through one Zoom campaign or one Zoom call during the campaign where rail wasn't a subject of discussion, and not a small part of the discussion on any, and God knows how many we did. They were countless, right? I knew locally it was on everybody's radar screen of concern. I didn't realize until after we won the primary and I had experiences like that to be able to talk to people in official positions. And this was subsequent to them pulling the P3 and firing Andy Robbins, okay? That, while everybody was cheering for our rail project, it was on everybody's radar screen. And it was a source of great angst, frustration, consternation, and concerns, et cetera, about the status of that. And quite honestly, about the apparent disarray that we were in. So when we were able to, as we got to know them, and by the time we got to Washington, we had calls with them, and they saw the collaboration that was going on, which was unprecedented. I mean, that was one of the first things I was told to do. Rick, if you guys on your end of the side of the fence, this is Janeway, need to get your act together. So we started off right at the beginning. And I said, no animus. I want the board at the table. And we've invited Tommy Waters every week from City Council, Roger Morton and John Nouchi, both the director and deputy managing director of DTS have been in the room, Mike Formby, myself, and we have worked around, on that. And I think that they really like that. And when Lori and Rick Keene, of course. And so when Lori was on, when we were in Washington and I watched her do her presentation, I had a meeting with the FTA alone in the morning, and then in the afternoon we presented collectively, but it was all Lori. I watched them watch her, and it was very approving, and they could see and feel the difference. Now, keep in mind, we've had 3 different entities review all of our numbers. We've had to go through, third-party review. We've had a PMOC review, and then we hired a company at the request of the FTA called Triunity. They had 5 people here for 3 months verifying our numbers and what we want to do. It still has to be presented in an overall recovery plan, which includes a lot of aspects with respect to ridership, value engineering, a lot of other things that are in there. But at the end of the day, I think that they've seen us take giant steps forward at not only being able to work collectively, but be able to put something on the table that was credible, that was intelligent. One of the things I kept hearing about, we shifted the conversation, Ryan. We shifted the conversation from what we couldn't do to what we could do. Now, that might seem like a minor nuance. That's a big difference in approach and our ability to sell through a plan that would be acceptable to them. Keep in mind, part of the reason why we need the FTA back, I'm just going to speak very candid here, and I hope I'm not talking out of school, is that they haven't given us any money since 2017. They've withheld that $744 million for all the reasons I just said. And I don't want to be on this call, and I'm not here to denigrate anybody before me or whatever else, but there was that kind of discord, if you will. And of course, as we went through the whole campaign, there was always this sort of aegis hanging over us. If we don't get it, they're gonna pull back or ask for all their money back, and so on and so forth. We wanted to shift that whole conversation. But if we get the FTA back at, being our construction partner, and that $744 million, Now, I asked for that over 3 years. That's a financial savings over 3 years of $75 million in finance costs. As it is, because they haven't been involved in paying us, the city has had to borrow construction dollars at a heavy finance cost in the hundreds of millions of dollars just because they haven't. It's essential for us to get them back into the fold as our construction partner and release of those funds. And if they were to release those funds sooner, for example, my wish would be give us all up front, the $744 million. We're well over $100 million savings in finance costs. And I intend, if we get the recovery plan approved, to go back and try and negotiate for that, because those dollars are significant and it'll make a big difference on our completing the project, financially in the way we said we can do.
There are a lot of comments right now asking about some more clarification on your mask policies. And so I just want to bring in this one from George. He says, the CDC director stated today that any county that is red in their community level map should impose indoor masking immediately. Will you commit to doing that if and when that happens for Honolulu? We know that that is the case on Kauai. As you noted in your conversation with Dr. Haggard-Green, we are in that medium range right now. But if we do get into the red,
I think we'll probably do that. I could see us probably doing that. I think, look, the idea here, whether we're talking about bail reform bill or whether we're talking about mask wearing, is to protect the public. That's the overall responsibility and lessons learned and what we know. Look, I had a 7 o'clock radio show. We had an 8:30 cabinet meeting. A 10 o'clock call with Dr. Green, which we ended so I could be on time for you guys at 10:30. I said at the outset, I want to talk to the state. We're going to do some more discovery today. I'm not in a position right now to that call to say this is what we'll definitively do, but we're going to do what's in the best interest of the public. Even if it's something that may not be even popular, we'll do that if that's what gets determined. But I need to do a little bit more due diligence on where we really are. This morning's call with Dr. Green was really to alert us to the fact of how things are trending in the hospital and what they looked at on their models, and we appreciated that dialogue. And she had already done that with the governor earlier. I intend to talk to DOH later today. At the end of the day, we want to take our responsibility is to do everything we can in the best public interest, and we will.
Well, half an hour goes extremely fast when we talk with you because there's so much topics to discuss. But before we let you go, I did want to just let you have an opportunity to just share a message with the people who are viewing this morning. The things that obviously we've covered a lot of topics here today. But what is just your message right now to the community as we see a myriad of things happening?
Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that opportunity. I would tell you some time ago, when we assessed where we were as we were battling through COVID, we knew, and it kind of redefines our administrative efforts, that the economic impact was considerable. And we're going to do everything and anything we possibly can to help stimulate economic recovery, okay? But beyond that, really fundamental, and it kind of even goes back to what we're talking about with respect to protecting people from criminal elements, if you will, is to rebuild our hope in the community. Okay, to rebuild a sense of positivity. We've been through so much. A lot of people have had a lot of anguish, a lot of suffering, a lot of loss. And so, that's not an easy task to do. I just want to let people know that, we live in a very special place. We're doing everything we can each and every day to the extent possible to make it better. We've got a road ahead. We're confident we're going to get there. And I want people to feel good about what we're trying to do. We've gone through a difficult time. And that's why this conversation on mask wearing, I know the fatigue that's out there. I know I've been through it. I've had COVID. I know it. I get it. But we've just got to get to the other side. And we're all in this together. And I just ask everybody to understand, cooperate, but know that better times are coming, and we're doing everything we can to make that happen. That's, it's about putting hope back in people's lives. And I know I can tell you that mayors around the country and around the world are thinking about the same thing. This is not a unique message from me. I've done some reading. I'm on Zoom calls. We're part of that Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. I have the privilege of being involved as a cohort with 39 other mayors, 23 from the United States. The balance is from 4 different continents. We're on the call each month together. I'm hearing this from all over the planet. It's that same message of hope we're all trying to instill in people. And of any place somebody should be doing that, it's here in Hawaii, because we're so blessed and so fortunate to be here.
We
All right.
certainly are, and we certainly appreciate your time. As Ryan noted, the time goes so fast. Thank you for covering so much ground with us and for your candor this morning. We really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Well, good to hear from the mayor. And, you know, he in the past has been an advocate of loosening restrictions and giving people freedoms and what he calls more personal responsibility. But we heard somewhat of a different tone this morning. He's really urging the public to wear masks when at all possible, whether they're gathering indoors or outdoors, but specifically indoors is what we talked about. But graduations or large gatherings that may occur outdoors, he's suggesting, you know, wear a mask there as well whenever you're encountering other people from other households. If these numbers continue to trend in the direction that they seem to be going, mandatory masking could be back on the table.
Yeah, it's something that he will, as he mentioned, will continue to examine. He said that he just got off the call with Dr. Green from Queens Hospital, and that he will continue in discussions later today with other state officials regarding suggestions and their projections and predictions of how this could happen, what's happening in our community as COVID seemingly continues to spread. But also noting that we are in a much different place than we were a year, 2 years ago. But that this really masking up, especially in large gatherings, could really help to continue to prevent the spread from happening even further. We were able to talk about a variety of issues, including his thoughts on the process of hiring the new leader for the Honolulu Police Department, saying that the process should not have taken a year long. You could sense his frustration with that, but understanding that this is something that needs to happen and needs to happen soon, and that he continues to place the public safety as a high priority, especially, of course, for this job, but for his role as the mayor of the city, recognizing that this is an issue and one that is top of mind for him.
That's right. He did cite the paper's article yesterday. If you haven't had a chance, I'd encourage you to go back and read it because it is really stunning that crime is at a 3-year high, according to the numbers from HPD. That is not acceptable to the mayor. And so he says public safety is his number one priority, be that in Chinatown, Waikiki, or any community that he is responsible for. And he did note that we have a huge shortage of police officers and people in other departments. That was very interesting, Ryan. You know, he's talked about labor shortages in the past, but to hear that they might not be able to staff summer fun as high a level as they want to, or that even, different facility maintenance and things like that are not getting repaired as fast as they need to be because they, just like every other sector, are suffering from not being able to hire enough workers.
Yeah, the labor issues continuing throughout not only the city, but really throughout the state, as we've spoken to many other leaders. And this is an issue that continues on for many who are looking for qualified employees to help fulfill some of those needs. We also talked about rail. He seems to think that the rail is in a good position, that they've spent a lot of time on this recovery plan, and his conversations with the FTA were positive and one that he feels optimistic about and moving forward. And so we encourage you, if you miss any part of this conversation, to go back and watch it. Of course, it is also available on a podcast for those who like to consume your media that way. Again, a number of topics that we discussed, but we always appreciate getting an update from the mayor. One thing that we weren't able to address and talk to him a little bit more about was Red Hill, but we will be discussing that on Friday.
That's right. Ernie Lau, who is the chief engineer with the Board of Water Supply, will be joining us to give us the latest on what those water shortages look like as we are heading into summer. The good news is that it has been raining quite a bit, so that always, he says, makes him happy, but clearly not enough to make up the deficit from that shutdown well that continues to happen over at the Halaba Shaft. So we will talk to him about that, about exploring new wells, and then also how the Navy has been in terms of compliance with the order to shut down that facility and how his conversations with that entity are going. So please do join us right back here, 10:30 on Friday, for our conversation with Ernie Lau.
Take care. Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs.